So it's funny thinking back to the long ago when we started Silicon and Synapse, what now became Blizzard Entertainment. We really had no idea what we were doing. We were fresh out of college. We just thought it would be fun to make games, and in our wildest dreams could never have imagined that Blizzard would become what it is today.
I started working for Blizzard in February of 1992.
Yeah, it was like, let's learn how to make games. Let's see what it's like to be a professional developer. This is awesome.
You do the math. If I was 30 when I started at Blizzard in 91, yes, I will be 60 next year, which is a scary thought because the 30 years went by pretty quick.
My very first title when I joined the company, I don't think I had one, but as soon as we got business cards, my first title was music director, I think.
I was the second employee, fourth person on board, and so Frank was sitting in the front office, which was quite small, and had a kitchen sink in it. And then Alan had a middle office, which was even smaller, but had a door. And then Mike and I shared the back office, and it wasn't that big either.
Alan had brought me in. We went into his office. We had a quick talk about what he expected from me from work, and then put me at the desk right behind Frank in the front room. He also said that I had to help answer the phones because we didn't have a receptionist, and Frank was answering the phones, and so he put me on the phones. So Frank and I would switch off answering the phones. Which is weird because at that time, both Frank and I were pretty grumpy people. I got over being grumpy. I think Frank is still pretty grumpy, but that's just Frank.
We wanted to make games. We wanted to make games that we wanted to play. We wanted to make games that other people would want to play. It was really about, you know, being able to earn a living while doing something we loved. And that was really Alan's charter was, let's just make games and have some fun.
We didn't have any real highbrow goals. We were just a bunch of kids just graduated from college.
We just wanted to make games that lots of people would love and play for long periods of time.
And making a bunch of them. We made games so fast back in the day. I remember working on two games at a time sometimes.
You know, philosophically, the way we approached making games was we just played a ton of games. It's what we love to do. It's why we started the company. And that was kind of where we got the inspiration for most of our ideas. We'd play other games, and the things we liked is sort of what we then thought we could do better, and that's what we wanted to make.
In the 1985, 86, 87, the big thing was to go to the mall and go to the stand-up arcade room, where there would be 100 different stand-up arcades. And one of the ones that I played a lot at that time was Pole Position. So when the job opportunity came along, they wanted to hire me to work on Rock and Roll Racing. They asked me what games I loved, and I told them, oh, I love playing Pole Position and various other games. And so apparently that was a pretty good indication that maybe I would be a right fit.
I came from television, where I worked making graphics for television back in the late 80s and the early 90s. And I believe I interviewed February 9th, I believe. And it was really sad because I showed up in a suit, and Alan had told me later, he goes, we made so much fun of you because you showed up in a suit that it was ridiculous. And I go, that's okay, you hired me, so obviously I did something right.
My first day at Blizzard was learning how to use a computer. Like I said, I had never really owned a computer. I've played on it a few times, but I had never used a mouse before. I had never used any art programs. I've played a lot of video games, but that was different than the programs that we used to create them. So my first day was learning how to turn on a computer, how to format a disk, use a mouse, draw pixel by pixel, learn how to use only 15 colors per character.
I showed up in a I Love Toxic Waste t-shirt that I had seen out of Real Genius, because I had always thought, the day that I go work for a company, I want it to be the kind where I can show up in a Tasmanian devil eating a peace sign with I Love Toxic Waste on the back, and they'll say, he fits in.
I remember coming down to Blizzard for the first time, Silicon Synapse back then, and driving from LA down to Orange County. And sure enough, there was traffic on the 405, and it took me probably over 2 hours to get down here, and I was just like, oh, I was like so sorry, and like they're like, oh, it happens all the time.
Kind of a funny story about the name itself, Silicon and Synapse. Maybe there's a tiny bit of a goal encapsulated there. Silicon, the building block of the computer, and Synapse, the building block of the human mind. The problem was no one knew what either of those really meant or how to spell it. So it was a terrible name for us to call the company. And of course, a couple years in, we ended up switching it to Blizzard Entertainment.
Rock and Roll Racing was a little bit underdeveloped when I came in. It was what they were hiring me for. The engineer who had been working on it had left the company and they needed to fill that spot. So they had an interview, which was one of those roundabout things. A friend of a friend told me that someone's cousin needed somebody. It turned out that that was Alan Adham, who they were talking about, that needed somebody to come in.
I sat down and then I had to convert my knowledge of the digital arts.
I still found that a lot of that's attributed to the Blizzard art style was based in the old games that we did, where we had a lot of limited resources and a limited space that we could do it in, and we just used whatever we had and tried to just dominate whatever game we were working on, whether it was a comedy, action adventure, racing game, it didn't matter, it was a Blizzard game.
Noticed that the office was not what I was used to, because in television your head's down most of the time because you're working on stuff. But here everybody seemed to talk to each other, everybody seemed to get along really good, and I really enjoyed the first week there and never looked back.
One of the main things it meant to be working at Blizzard in the early days is that your car would break down, you would get dumped by your girlfriend, and you would need a place to stay. Like, all three of those happened to most people. Some people, one or two of them only happened. And another thing that happened when you joined Blizzard, you had to make a desk.
We would buy these really cheap desks that would come in a really narrow box. It was tall, thin, and heavy. And it's like, all right, your first job is to assemble your desk. And some people have really good mechanical aptitude and they'd be fine. And other people, it would take them several days and they'd get injured, or their desks would be rickety and prone to falling over.
I was one of the lucky ones that my desk was already built when I got there.
No, I hired to be a game developer, not a furniture assembly person. But yeah, lots of people went through it, and it was just part of the culture of coming on board. Maybe a bit of a hazing ritual even.
We were just a bunch of guys who were trying to make really cool games and make ends meet. I think it wasn't until a little bit later that we started solidifying some of our, what do we actually want to do here as we go forward, because this is taking off and we're going to be a real company.
But mostly we just wanted to have a good time. We were young, make some games, and never could have imagined how this would have all had turned out.
And as far as I know, I'm the only person from back in the day that's never made a desk, and now I've actually told that to you, so everyone's going to hear it. And now I'm going to have to make a damn desk. God, can we cut this part?